Alright, R2, it's time to open our Christmas presents. Should you get mine first, or I get yours? It's the top one? Okay. Let's see, buddy, what'd you get me? Oh, it's the Pleroma from Elijah Isham and Wee Knives. This is awesome. I'm so excited about this, buddy. How'd you know? I don't whisper things in my sleep. What are you talking about? Alright. You ready to open yours? Alright. Your favorite. Some nano oil. I know you're excited. You know, you're right. We do kind of enable each other, don't we? Well, enjoy your Christmas, buddy. I'm gonna enjoy mine. So here it is, the Wee Knives Pleroma. I am very excited about this knife. This is definitely my most anticipated knife since I've gotten into the hobby, which has been about 6 months or so. Finally, it's here. We can get my full take on the Pleroma, designed by Elijah Isham. So I'm glad that I got to review this guy because it might be making an appearance from time to time. It'll give us a little bit of a contrast in one of Elijah Isham's previous designs. So with that out of the way, let's do our traditional. I have to zoom out a little bit. This is a little guy. Little guy. All right. We got our PM2 and our Para 3. This is a 2.95 inch blade on the Pleroma. Got a 3.44 from the shoulder blade on the PM2 and our 3 inch on the Para 3. So this is a very small knife. As far as like aiming the pivot up to the Para 3, I think that's definitely the closer comparison we want to kind of look at. The tail end of the knives are a little bit shorter. So if we get these guys out of the way, just giving you an idea of how much room we're working with, it's right at about 4 inches of handle on there. It's kind of hard to see with the angle, but it's there. One of my biggest complaints for me personally on this knife was the kind of awkward handle. And so we'll get into it a little bit here, but I will be bringing this guy in to compare. Even though this is definitely a smaller knife, I think overall the geometry of it just works in its favor, and we'll see that as we go through. Before we jump into our traditional dent, where we're looking at the decent, excellent, the nitpicks, and the terrible of the knife, we need to get some readings here. So 2.64 ounces on this guy. This is an all-star in terms of weight. Under an ounce-inch by a huge margin. Obviously, when you look at the knife, you can see how they pulled that off. You got titanium, you got some carbon fiber, you got some cutouts. End result is a very, very lightweight little guy in your pocket. So that is awesome. I do want to zoom in. Another reminder, this is in 4K. If you're on a Mac with Safari, you might want to switch to a different browser so you can drink it all in. All right. So without further ado, in our decent section, we've got this beautiful Wharncliffe blade. This is incredibly practical, and it's extremely similar to our Wharncliffe blade on the Kaiser Mini Therium. So that makes it look a lot bigger than it is, but very similar, kind of a very subtle belly to it. It's not a perfect straight line. This one's got a little bit more belly to it than the Pleroma does, but still, as far as effectiveness, their tips are very similarly sized and shaped. The swedge on the Mini Therium makes it look a little bit thinner than it actually is. I wouldn't be worried in terms of like tip strength or anything like that. It's just very, very practical on the blade. Now, presentation side, you'll notice this blade is clean as a whistle. What kind of garbage do they print on the backside? Nothing. Oh, I love this blade. All right, so obviously, practically, it's a good blade. But aesthetically, not having all this garbage billboarding on the blade really does make a difference. I've got, 3 different things going on here. They're upside down, at an angle, in different, this is bold, that's not bold. We flip over, we've got the mini theorem, we've got Elijah Isham's little logo there. This is like the side of a bus, man. It's too much. I really don't like this. This, on the other hand, is beauty incarnate. But what blade is it? How are we going to know what kind of steel it is? Well, it's M390, and you know how I know? Let's see if we could bring this into focus. Oh, look at that little tiny subtle M390. Oh, I love the subtlety here. It's not, they could have just kept it off the blade entirely, keeping with the theme of keeping it nice and clean. But no, this is even better than just having nothing on there. There's no doubt what steel this is. It's very subtle but findable. I really, really like that. So, the opening aperture is the next thing we're going to kind of talk about. I'm a fan of spider flicking knives, and this is no exception. The opening aperture works just as well as the one on here. Of the annoying things I had to say about the mini theorem, overall I liked it. I liked that there was 2 different ways to open it with the flipper tab and the opening aperture. So we've got something very similar here. We've got an opening aperture that's extremely practical, easy to do, deploys every time. Next, you'll notice that there is a thumb stud, a floating thumb stud. It's ambidextrous. You got it on both sides. And I really like this. On the prototype Pleromas that, were kind of passed around to a couple of the YouTubers, these were anodized bronze as well as the titanium on the handle. And so I felt like those kind of stuck out, even though I do prefer the bronze anodizing on the knife. I did agree that the thumb studs kind of looked a little out of place. So making them just your normal, nude titanium, I think does blend overall a little bit better with the look of the knife and the carbon fiber. And it looks more like they belong there and are less out of place. So how good do they work? Well, they work pretty well. It's very easy to flick it out with authority with those thumb studs, no problem. Detent on this guy is excellent. It's not too hard, but it's definitely right in that medium zone where if you like a good hard detent, you're not going to complain about it. If you don't like hard detents, you're not going to be frustrated with trying to get this open. Obviously the blade doesn't fall out, so it's right where it needs to be. Really, really well done by and dialing that in. Speaking of the action itself, it is on bearings and it's a very smooth knife. The blade is so lightweight that you're not going to get some crazy drop shut. Once you get that detent ball onto the tang of the blade, it only takes a couple little jostles and you can get that blade to fall in place. So as far as a 3-inch blade this thin and light, the action is actually quite good. I think that it's not gonna win any drop shut action awards, but in this class I think it's definitely on the higher end. I'd put it in the 90 percentile as far as action on this size of blade, given the shape and the size and all that stuff. So I'm very happy with the action overall, and the detent ball, getting it onto the tang of the blade, is a little bit easier than it was on the stupid mini theorem. That wants to fight you. It wants to pop back open. It's when I try to disengage it, it's it wants to pop out and re-engage into the blade. That's frustrating, and it's just a subtle difference. Obviously, I can get it to work, but the overall feel of the knife as far as opening it and closing it, it doesn't feel like you're having to fight the design or fight the tension at all. It naturally does what it's supposed to do, which is cool. Next thing I want to talk about is the clip. I haven't really got a chance to look at the clip too much here. This is a really nice clip. It's very simple. It flows with the rest of the knife. Notice it's chamfered on the corner here, so it's springy enough. It's got enough of a ramp that you're not going to have a hard time getting it in there. This was, again, another problem that I had with the Mini Therium, where it's like a spear on the end of that sucker. And then notice there's no ramp. It's just a wall right here. So you try to poke it in this way, and it's not that much of a ramp, and the tension was so tight. Like, oh man, it's like 3 times tighter on this. I think not everybody had their Mini Therium be this frustrating, because nobody really mentioned it in the review. So I don't know if I have a lemon or if people are just kind of giving this a free pass and I'm complaining. I don't know, but I am reviewing the knife, so I'm going to point out garbage like that. This is that clip done right. It's chamfered. I don't need to lift it up with my finger because that one is so tight. But even then, everything slides into place just like it ought to. In the hand, it's comfortable. There's no hot spots on this at all. I'm really, 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 really pleased with this clip. I think it's very well done. Next is the fit and finish. The fit and finish on this sucker is dialed in. We look at the centering is basically perfect. The tolerances are very tight. The seam between the carbon fiber and the titanium is uniform and very, very precise, very tight. Unlike the jack that I reviewed, it was a little bit kind of clumsily put in there, the inlay. The only thing that I've really noticed that you might call an imperfection is a little tiny hole right there. It's very subtle. You got like 2 chunks of carbon fiber. The seam up here is pretty good. You can only really see the seam at certain angles. And if it wasn't for that little hole right there, I probably would have put the fit and finish in the excellent, but because of that, I'm putting it in the good. But overall, it's very, very well done. I think that's the only thing that I could really find to like complain about. Everything is really just done well. So, the lockup is perfect. Disengages really easy. Yeah, really, really good. All right, so next in the excellent, we're moving on to the excellent. I've got kind of the overarching point of the design with some kind of sub points here. So, kind of in the context of the design of this knife, first thing I want to talk about, some really cool things they've done. So they've got this carbon fiber that's going all the way through on the other side, right? But you need to have a lock bar. So what they've done is 3 screws to kind of attach that steel lock bar into place. So I'm pretty happy with that. It's hidden. You really do have to look for those screws to even notice it. And so, most ways that you're looking at it, it's not something you would even see or notice unless you get really, really close. But there it is. And I think the design of kind of, taking these carbon fiber, not inlays, but it's actually, part of the knife, the construction of the knife, and still figuring out a good way to have a lock bar in there. Obviously, 3 screws makes me feel a lot safer than 2. So I think they did what they needed to do to get this done right. So that's cool. Moving on, this back part. Now, this is really one of the big innovations of the knife. Technically, this is an integral knife, an integral handle. What Elijah is calling this, and I might be saying this wrong, but it's a curved vertebral integral titanium handle. So it's the spine, the vertebrae of the knife is really just milled out in this curved kind of sway back thing going on. And so it gives the knife a lot of rigidity, and it's very sturdy while still, having these carbon fiber, struts, you might say, that are not just inlays but a part of the knife. And so it's a cool way to kind of, make the knife both thin, light, unique, but also strong. For such, a skeletonized design, I think this makes a lot of sense. Obviously, it looks awesome. It's got that, it's solid, just piece. It's very well contoured. It feels really good in the hand. the design of this is just amazing. I really, really like this when you have, practicality and innovation kind of meeting at that crossroads and coming out with something that just performs well, looks well, and is sturdy and strong. So A+ on that. Then the next little innovation that's kind of hidden here is these are the stop pins. So it's an internal stop pins that are exposed. So I don't know if you call them external. I think the phrase they're calling it is the lateral bolsterlock mechanism. Rolls right off the tongue. But basically what's happening here is this knife is so small, it'd be hard to hide these, stop pins. You can't put one here. Obviously, it's really is like an integral knife as far as like how they're gonna put some stop pins in there. So we get to see the whole thing happen. It locks in place, extremely sturdy, and then when the blade shuts, it's resting right there. It's connecting right there on both sides. So this is kind of cool. I like it. You get to see kind of the insides of the inner workings of the knife. I also, from a practical standpoint, like it because I can just, rinse this out and oil it up, and I don't really have to get in there. It's not all positive, and I'll talk about that down below, but still, the design itself, I'm giving, an A+, and it's getting into the excellent part. And you can just see it working really well. It's smooth, it's strong, it sounds great. It definitely has that acoustic element to it that's not needed, but appreciated when it's there. And I like it. That's great. So the design overall, Elijah, I think this is the pinnacle of your design. And, the Mini-Therium is basically the design from the Megatherium, which was his first collab, his first big design that was taken to the market. And so, a lot of people like the Megatherium, a lot of people like the Mini-Therium, and it's a good design. I had nitpicks and personal quibbles with the knife, and I think it definitely could have been made better by Kizer, but it's interesting to see the evolution of his design, that the blade is so simple, so similar between the two, that everything else about the knife, this is just ramped up to level 10, and this is, you can see the glimmer and the gleam in his mind's eye of what he might be able to do in the future, and this is that payoff. This is really all that work that he's put in, all these collabs that he's done. He's just cranking out designs left and right, but I think this is the most refined and most elegant design he's put out yet. So really cool to see that evolution in a designer, and really awesome to have it in my hands and be able to reap the rewards of that design. So good job, Elijah. I very much appreciate what you're doing in the industry. So last excellent thing, and this is just how comfortable this knife manages to be, even though it's so small. So I'm going to try to turn my hand around here. Again, medium hands. It's enough to where I can get my pinky on there, and it's not right on the back. It's not like falling off. It fits great in this just normal, saber grip. I don't even need to choke up to feel 100% comfortable in this knife. So, again, comparing it to the poor Mini-Therium, doing the same thing, this curve here kind of drops off, and so my pinky just does not have a place to live. It doesn't feel the same. It's so blocky back there that it doesn't have the range to like grip up onto the other side of the knife. And so it feels like a three-hand knife instead of a three-hand. Three-hand, that's for my lightsaber review. But anyway, so three-finger grip is really what this knife feels comfortable with. It just doesn't quite fit on there. Obviously, this is going to be different. If you have smaller hands, you're probably going to love the Mini-Therium, and you would love the Pleroma. If you have medium hands, I think you don't need to shy away from the Pleroma just because it's such a small knife. It fits, it's contoured, it's rounded, it's comfortable. If I choke up, it's not such a steep step to go to that choke up grip, and it feels just as natural, and manage to have my control. So again, over here it's such a harsh step. You got the hidden flipper tab here, it's kind of angled away from you, and it's just the awkward. I could feel my tendon right here like stretching, doing these finger gymnastics to get my fingers to like fit on this knife. It's not comfortable. So this, that it's so small and so minimalistic, but still manages to be, contoured and comfortable. It's definitely wider than the mini Therium, but I think that is a positive. I think it's less blocky. It's more evenly spread, but still has a good cutout for your finger. I think this solves all the problems that I had with the mini Therium, and is pretty much exactly what I want out of a knife. Now, that's it for me gushing over the knife, at least until the conclusion. Let's move on to the nitpicks. I have 4 things in the nitpicks. Thing number 1. Now, these exposed stop pins are exposed. So just as easy it is to clean it out and lube it up, it's easy for gunk to get in there. So it's kind of, maybe a wash in terms of having to wash it. But it's something I will, point out. In the time that I was carrying the knife, it did seem like, there's lint in there or whatever. I could blow it out. It wasn't an issue, and it hasn't messed with the action so far. But long term, super long term, that might be kind of a pain in the neck. Second thing, it's not easy to take this knife apart. I attempted it, and the knife promptly chopped me up real good. This is definitely the worst cut I've had. I was being an idiot, I guess. I don't even know how it happened. It just did. And I stopped halfway through. I was like, you know what? I'm not going to take the knife apart. I don't feel like I really need to. I was able to lube it up and get the action up to where I wanted it to be without having to take it apart. It's just so open that it was not an issue to lube it up. So, it's kind of like pros and cons. I think overall, it's in my nitpick. It's not a terrible thing. It's just something. It's like other integrals. That's kind of the downside to them, is that they're more sturdy. They look cool. It's more elegant in a lot of ways. But as far as opening up your knife and getting in there, it's going to be more difficult. Not impossible at all. More difficult. Next thing, this WE knife pivot. Now, this is free spinning. It doesn't have like a shelf. It doesn't lock into place. So it was a little awkward, when I was trying to take it apart to get it back together and get it lined up. The weird thing about the design of this knife is you've got, the blade. So if I'm using the blade to like center it, do I line it up to that? And then it looks awkward when it's turned here. Do I use equal sides of this kind of like bolster? I don't know. So I ended up aligning it to when the knife is sitting on a table, it's lined up. But no matter what you do, it's going to look off center because there's no center to really center it to. There's a secondary, I don't know if it's new, but just a secondary WE symbol. I'll put it on the screen, but it's basically like, W's going in 3 circles, or 3 W's going in a circle. So there is no orientation to that pivot. I think that would be cool if they'd use that design for this pivot just to avoid that problem. This is like the minorest of quibbles, but I don't know. I think it would make the knife better in that you would never have to worry about it. It'd just be, wee, all the way home. Next thing, I kind of mentioned this already, but the prototypes of the Pleroma were in bronze. And so like an idiot, I went and bought a bunch of bronze things in preparation for that knife. And it's not bronze. So eggs on my face, I guess. I might go get it anodized. Totally personal preference. I do think that overall the just naked nude titanium blends in with the carbon fiber and the blade a little bit better than the bronze, and it's 100% subjective. I just false advertising. I don't know. So I just didn't know what to expect, and so I was a little bit disappointed for me personally. Not a big deal. I could get it anodized. I might do that. We'll see. All right, for the terrible, I really don't have anything terrible to say about this knife. I think the small things, the quibbles that I have about the knife, the little nitpicks, are just that. They're nitpicks. They're not that big of a deal. On the whole, there's nothing really terrible. I don't think. I mean, if you got gigantic hands, this might not be the one for you, but that's not the knife's fault. You know, it's just, it is what it is. So, with that being said, let's move on to the conclusion. The conclusion is this. This is the most Nehemiah knife I have come across. It's small but comfortable. It uses premium materials. You got M390, you got carbon fiber, you got titanium. Awesome. It's packed with innovation. That improves the knife. You have the vertebral, integral spine of the knife. You've got this exposed stop pin bolster thing going on. It's extremely lightweight. For the blade size, you have two different ways to open them. Both ways are satisfying and snappy. It's very practical, and it's reasonably priced. It's $300. Now, when I reviewed the Mini Ethereum, that was all in the context of this knife costing $200. That's how much it cost when it came out. That's how much this sucker bought it for. And then it went down to like $165. Had I known this knife was $165, I probably would have been a lot easier on this knife, because then it's closer to half the cost of this one. Then, you know, in that context, I think it's fine. It's okay. It's a good knife. But for $200, personally, the issues I had with it, I don't know if the clip is this bad on all of them. Then maybe I would have been a little bit more positive on it. That aside, is this knife worth $300? Hell yes, it's worth $300. You're getting, you know, a very well done, well executed, premium parts knife. You're not going to have to worry about some crazy quality control. You're not going to have to worry about weird custom issues of having to wait for the knife. It's still in stock. This knife is awesome. You really do get all the new innovation. You get the premium parts. You get something that is extremely small, compact, no pocket peckers in your pocket, easy to get in and out, extremely practical blade, awesome action, distinct look, and man, I cannot recommend this knife enough. This is really, really, really fantastic. So that's my review for the WE Knives Pleroma by Elijah Isham. I hope this is helpful to you, and enjoy your holidays. Bye.